all managers do different things in terms of putting light pressure on the referee or on the officials. Everybody's trying to gain an edge here, and one of the more clever ones you learn as you go along, and one of the more clever ones I saw with a very, very experienced, an All-Ireland winning manager, was he would simply just walk out at half-time to the referee and quote statistics. Whether they were true or not, I don't know. The number of frees he got and the number he got in the scoring area.
The GAA Hour is sponsored by Paddy Power. For exclusive content from their GAA ambassadors and other high-profile contributors, check out news.paddypower.com.
Some good news to start off, Cheddar. So the GAA are streaming the Joe McDonagh Cup games. So we got what we were complaining about. And it's on GAA now. So the Offaly Antrim game is going to be streamed on GAA now this weekend with commentary teams and a whole lot. So that's fantastic. And the final is going to be shown live on TG Ceathair. So listen, this is all we've been asking for, to show the Tier 2 in hurling the respect that it deserves, because it's a Tier 2 and God knows there's only 10 Tier 1 teams, so it's not like we're gone down to the 25 to 30 teams here, Cheddar. It's number 10 to 15 and they deserve that coverage.
Look, they all do, Wooly, really. We wouldn't want to just mark out the Christy Rings and the other competitions there either. Look, it's a positive initiative. Probably under a lot of pressure from a lot of people, including yourself, Wooly, here, putting pressure on it and getting it out there. But look, whereas I'll praise the initiative, but it's simply not enough to any extent of how to develop and promote the games in this county. If the objective here is to bring these counties back up to Leinster or Munster competition performance, these are critical factors in terms of development of the game within those counties, and it would be totally insufficient. I really, really welcome it, but you probably have to ask: was it due to pressure, or was it due to some strategic thinking within the GAA? I probably think it was the former, and needs to be an awful lot more work done here. If the objective is to bring there's 5 or 6 teams or whatever is in Joe McDonagh, and teams underneath that as well. Let's not forget there are other teams there working really, really hard under that level as well, up to the level to be able to perform at the top. And that's not a 1, 2, 3 year plan. That may very well be a 10, 15, 20 year plan. I think somebody, maybe Ali Moore, mentioned it during the week, that the GAA needs to be looking at this, and this is a critical part of that. I suppose the showcasing of your county team within your own county to be able to invigorate and motivate young people to play the game is crucial to the development of that game. It is.
Make it more prestigious and have the county team on television and make it look like it's important and young people will want to play. Just on that, talking about young players wanting to play, I saw the Laois Minor hurlers on TG Ceathair on Monday night, and they gave Westmeath an awful beating. I'm incredibly excited about this minor team, Cheddar. Now, Westmeath maybe weren't at the races, but Jesus, they had some great players. They had an O'Shaughnessy fella there. They had from Balnakill. They had a Cuddy wing forward, number 12, Ty Cuddy from Castletown, who looked brilliant. They had a load of players. Now, I don't know, I know highlights can be misleading, but Jesus, this looked like a brilliant Laois Minor hurling team, as good as I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, they're a little bit misleading. I think this may very well be just a weak year in Westmeath, Wooly. But it is, look, as Laois people, we're absolutely delighted with it. Some of these young players have fair pedigree, by the way. O'Shaughnessy and Balnakill are noted to hurling for a long time, and Cuddies and Dooleys, they're all relations there.
And Duggins, but not the Portlaoise Duggins.
Yeah, yes, true. But I'd actually say what's really encouraging about that team, I stand corrected here, but I think there might be only 1 or 2 of them at best that are over age next year. Look, if I was a betting man and I was looking for long odds at the minute, I'd be looking for that Laois Minor team to do very, very well very, very well next year. A lot of people are working strongly. The likes of Seamus Dooley and former Laois hurlers are working very, very strong on the ground. I think we took our eye off the ball again for a couple of years there, but I think that the development work is starting to happen again. I think Pat Critchley was the spearhead of that for a good number of years, and the current team is probably a product of that, whereas it's starting again. And great credit to Enda Lyons and his management team as well. He's got a close management team and a very very an experienced team of how to deal with that age group and that. And you simply cannot beat hard work on the ground and doing the right things with teams to try to move them on. So there's encouraging signs in Laois hurling, and just need to really keep the nose to the grindstone now, I suppose, and work really, really hard with them over the next couple of years.
Yeah, so it's Wexford Laois Miners play next week. So keep your eye out for that if you're just looking out for results. Laois Minor hurlers, and definitely next year, according to Cheddar, this crowd.
I think so. There is some very technically gifted young players.
That's what I thought. Yeah, very skillful fellas.
And look, you will go nowhere without that. Of course, you need the mix. And I'd even say more than that. I'm obviously wearing a Laois hat here, Wooly. I'd say every Laois, hurling supporter, get behind a minor team. It means a lot, particularly these games, because there may not be a huge amount of people at it, and just having support there to them means a lot to the young players.
Yeah, exactly right. We'll move off that in case people think this is a Laois podcast.
Every chance we get, Wooly.
So Davy Fitz got off with a warning. Well, it looks like he's getting off with a warning. So he's just been reported for an encroachment and not abusive language, which he said afterwards he hadn't used. So a warning looks like it's going to be the most likely outcome from the CCCC. Fair enough, Cheddar, you think? It's just Davy being Davy, nothing serious in it. It's just, we and Brian were talking on Monday that he admitted before that he did it to rally his team up against Tipperary that time. So like, Brian Lohan, interestingly, was talking, he was doing a Croke Park Legends tour, and he was saying, I don't know if it's genuine passion. We're all passionate about the game, but we show it in different ways. So, he has the way he does things, and people have to kind of fit into that. So we know Brian, there's no love lost between Brian Lohan and Davy Fitz. Reading between the lines there, Brian is kind of saying that that's all a bit of an act. I think he might be onto something.
I'm not going to comment on Brian and Davy. Look, there are personal differences between the two people themselves, and both of them have given a massive amount of hurling here. I think people have missed the point with Davy, to be honest with you, Wooly. I think Davy knows very well what he's doing, and does these things deliberately, and the timing and when he does them are for effect for his team, and that's all he's doing, is trying to gain an edge for his team here. And I think Davy knows well that there's swings and roundabouts, that one of his players will get fouled, and I'll be damn sure that one of his players will foul somebody else as well, and I'm sure Davy won't be jumping up and down screaming about that. So I think he knows well what's all managers do different things in terms of putting light pressure on the referee or on the officials. Everybody's trying to gain an edge here, and one of the more clever ones you learn as you go along, and one of the more clever ones I saw with a very, very experienced, an All-Ireland winning manager, was he would simply just walk out at half-time to the referee and quote statistics, whether they were true or not I don't know, the number of frees he got and the number he got in the scoring area, and that, and he just left it there, as the snowflakes say now, we'll just let it out there. And of course the referee going in at half-time was bound to ask, God, am I giving a lot of frees here against, and so on. You can just think of how that would play out.
That's a very good idea, isn't it? And that would be subtly done. That wouldn't even be picked up on the cameras probably, would it?
Not at all, no. And look, this is the level that we're going to. Managers would man mark you, the other manager on the other sideline. You go to the referee, and guarantee you will have somebody from the opposite management team on your shoulder just checking what you're saying and that. There's one other little thing though, Willie, that is interesting here. David doesn't need anybody to give him advice on this. He's a very, very experienced man, and a very, very intelligent man, knows exactly what he's doing here. But the other management team could play this to their advantage as well. They could have the hurley carrier, or I don't know, somebody within his management team down standing beside Davy and riling him up, because when you're emotional like that, you're not making rational decisions, you're not making rational structural decisions or tactical decisions, and these are very, very high pressured games. It could have 10,000 people behind you. There was in Galway last weekend, in Wexford it'll be even more the next day. So it could be played back on Davy as well, that somebody could actually turn the show around on himself, and then trying to deal with these things with somebody else screaming in your ear mightn't be help the leader. But I think people just need to know what's going on here, and fourth officials and referees and all of that don't react to it, because that's exactly what Davy is looking for here. He's looking for a spark to spark his team here, and look, this has happened. Certainly the performance in Kilkenny improved against Tipperary. Now I wouldn't agree with what Davy did that in terms of getting involved with the player physically and all of that. That probably crosses the line.
I wouldn't say he meant that initially going out. That's how it turned out.
I agree with that. No, I don't think he did. But all of the other stuff, we're gaining edges here. As the staying in the American football, it's a game of inches here, and they all matter. Davey will gain an edge somewhere if that's to motivate his team or re-energise his team, and it worked in Galway last Sunday. He may have been sent up to the stand, but the players sort of saw that, look, this guy is fighting for our cause here, we better rate our game here. But as I say, it could be turned the other way against you as well. If you get highly emotive like that and you're emotionally charged, you're unlikely to make good decisions, because you're a little bit blinded by the emotion that's going on around you.
Derek McGrath was talking in the Examiner. He had a good piece in the Examiner, and he was talking about the fourth official, and he was saying, although I'm out of it less than a year, I was struck by the number of times I conversed with a linesman or fourth official in the most conciliatory tone possible, and they only say to you, I can't give it, Derek, I'm not the referee. So you wonder, what's the point in even berating this fourth official? He's no power to do anything. You're just trying to vent, really, isn't that all?
This is it's for show for the players in the field,
right?
Really. But there's other parts to that. You're right, the fourth official doesn't. I'm pretty sure is not wired up to the referee. The linesmen are. If I have something to say, I'll be saying it to the linesman on his way by me or something like that. Because they do speak to one another in that. But bear in mind that the fourth official can add. I think according to rule, he can add to the referee's report. He is there to observe what's going on around the place. That's his job. So if he was to put something down that worked against you, and you missed a couple of games, well, you might win a small fight on the day and lose the battle over 2 or 3 games. So you just need to be careful of what you're doing here. And I actually think, if I'm just going on memory here and I could be wrong, I think the fourth official was Brendan Murta from Westmeath, if I'm correct. I think it was the same man who was belonging to Kilkenny. Now I stand corrected on that. So maybe Davy, and if that is the case, maybe Davy has a bit of a personal difference with him. I don't know.
Even though he can't do anything. Derek McGrath mentioned something else in the Examiner piece. I thought it was very interesting, and we mentioned Pat Critchley there and coaching the young fellas up through, and I've never come up through the hurling underage ranks, Cheddar, so apparently Derek was saying that you're taught you hammer into the young lads 2 hands on your hurley when you're rising it, and that's been the traditional way to do it. And he said that in the All-Ireland final in 2017 there were only 2 pickups in the whole game performed under pressure with 2 hands on the hurley. So is that traditional? Is the skill moved on so far now that young fellas, when they're being coached, are going to have to, from an early age, learn how to do it with 1 hand rather than 2?
There's no doubt about that, Wooly. By the way, it's disgraceful that you weren't coached in hurling in your younger years. I think the game has moved on. Look, there are certain situations where you probably need to do the 2 hand. In a ruck ball where you're getting planted to 2 feet over the ball, you'll more than likely work 2 hands on the hurley at that stage, so you're not knocked off the ball, you don't spill the ball easily. But 90% of the time you are going at pace to the ball, you take it with 1 touch to the hand, and you do not break stride, and you go forward. All players have that quality now, so I absolutely agree with Derek. And I often remember having the chat with Pat. You just mentioned Pat Critchley. It would be fantastic innovative coaching for hurling. We would often talk about, look, the day of putting the 2 hands in the hurley, and I hear it shouted off of banks and stands so much.
That's the old drive it in and all those ones.
Without a doubt, yeah, clear your lines and drive it, and 2 hands in the hurley and that. 2 hands in the hurley, and I can guarantee every county player in the county will be 20 yards gone by you by the time you get the 2 hands in the hurley. So I think we need to coach that. And look, it's a specific skill, but the game is all about speed and pace. You slow down that, or slow down coming into the ball to get your 2 hands or something like that in the hurley, and you're bending over and all that. Look, you're going to give the possession away very quickly, I think, at county level anyway.
Well, in the absence of coaching down through the years, Cheddar, when would players actually kind of start? The players would just realise themselves, would they? Or would they, you take it upon yourself at 16 maybe to say, look, Jesus, I'm going to have to start doing that? Or is it just at the really young ages, is the 2 hands on the hurley obsession, or is that right? When do they relax on that?
Well, I think, look, it's certainly a good point for a coach's discussion, Willie, because I probably think it is probably as good to start off, the very young at the nursery, and that to start off with 2 hands on the hurley, because it disciplines them in terms of getting possession into the hand and that, and there probably would be a good discussion, and I'd certainly like to give a little bit more thought around that. Yeah. But certainly once you get into adult level, and once you get 16, 17, most of the possessions to be won for you is sprinting at pace into the ball, take the ball to hand, not break stride, sprint and deliver, or whatever you want to do with the possession at that stage. And you ask a question, that's an interesting one actually, Willie, because I think most players do pick it up as they go along. There's not a huge amount of coaching. You sort of expect players at county level to know that, and to be really, really skilled in that, and real quickness. Do they pick that up themselves? Probably pick up a lot of it themselves in terms of ball wall stuff and all of the little skills that they do themselves. We probably don't coach a huge amount of it unless we're concerned about the team that it's not quick enough to the ball or something like that. We probably would do it at that stage. But there's probably not a huge amount that's done in that.
A lot of the skill I picked up in football down through the years was just myself, just seeing it on telly or thinking, geez, that worked for me there, and just trying to think why that worked, turning and doing different things with the ball. Or
the experts, I suppose, or the experts would say that that's the best learning, that you learn yourself. I mean, coaches are there to draw a picture for you, to draw a structure for you. The over-coaching, the over-structuring of things, and I might be accused a little bit of that myself at different times, is probably not the way to go. It's, and I suppose I credit him and I share a lot of that. I know we're talking about a different coaching level now. We're sort of talking tactical coaching rather than technical. But giving the player the skills and the room and the confidence to be able to try these things out is probably the right thing to do. But sometimes you've got to get down on the ground and get the basics right as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an important distinction between technical coaching. I spoke with Paul Connacht on the show here, and he was saying he doesn't really have time for so much technical coaching, whereas he coaches the tactical coaching with formations and moving the ball on through the lines. And I think that's a very interesting thing when people talk about coaching. They're not really sure what they mean, because it is very general when you say coaching. What are you coaching? What are you specifically talking about there?
Yeah, I'm not surprised that actually it was Paul that said that. Look, you would expect any player coming into inter-county level to have a very, very high technical skills, have all the skills in hurling. And, it probably, in terms of your strategy within your county, is that what you're doing? Are you making sure that we're providing a real high volume of quality players with high technical skills to now move into a tactical coaching environment? And I suppose that's the distinction really, going up to the adult level, Wooly, and particularly for hurling, because it's just,
and it should be that anyways. You shouldn't be bogged down with tactical coaching. It should be technical coaching up to minor, and that's...
I think so, yeah. And I think even just the maturity of the player to be able to take on and understand, game planning and movement and creation of space and all of those things probably doesn't really happen until maybe you're 16 or 17, or certainly close enough to minor anyway. Yeah,
exactly. Come here, this thing with the light ball has raised its head. I was reading... I think it was the Examiner as well. There was obviously 30 wides in this game. It was a terribly scrappy game. It was a really strong wind. And just wondering, has the light ball something to do with all the wides? We know the ball is that bit lighter. We know Patrick Horgan now. You can either eulogise about how brilliant this is, or you can say, Jesus, that's very far back. He's back on the 45 on the other side, scoring now. So I'm wondering if you can score that far back and it's because of the light ball. Is there an argument to say that the ball is like a balloon in the wind and it's very hard to score with a strong wind? Or is this just a one-off game with a load of wides and I'm reading too much?
I think that game was, and I think a lot of the people on both sides, both teams and commentators commented there was a strong breeze. And look, it's in Galway, you're close by the sea, there's probably a strong breeze. Wexford Park's the same. There's a number of stadiums around the country that are like that the wind just blows, and if it's sort of going crossfield at all, and some games are just like that, Wooly. Sometimes you have a very, very low number of wides and the shot conversion is very, very high, and it just so happens on the other day that it's the other way. I think that was one of these games. I think also bear in mind, both teams eventually set up very defensively from the start. So the space to set yourself and get the shot off and all of that was probably restricted towards other games. There was a number of things there. But I think back to the ball, Wooly, like I've seen some people writing some things and whinging about these things. And the design of the ball is important, because if it wasn't, they wouldn't be spending millions on the designs of golf balls and all of these things just to get these small margins are obviously very, very important in golf ball and in tennis and all of this. So the big companies wouldn't be spending that type of money if little redesigns and that on the ball weren't important. But in the overall scheme of things, if it improves the game, speeds up the game, why the bloody hell are we whinging about these things and trying to kill some of these initiatives? And I'd make one other comment as well. You mentioned about Patrick Horgan. The skillful players and with really good technique, and I'm probably relating this a little bit back to golf. all the top golf coaches will tell you that strength in golf, technique is much more important than strength or anything like that. And it's the same at hurling. I doubted if there is better technical players in my time watching hurling, as many of them anyway. You want to look at the Bubbles, you want to look at the TJ, you want to look at Pat Horgan. There's a raft of those type of players.
Mannion from Galway is very technical.
Two of them actually. They would probably be able to strike a stone that distance. It didn't make a difference whether it's the technique of actually striking the ball. And the other comment I'd make on that is that if the ball was that light and the wind affected it so much, well, if you were playing against the breeze, the bloody thing would be coming back to you. So I just don't think. I think there's a lot of people just have something to say about something, and I think if something is there that improves the game, speeds up the game, makes it more of a spectacle, look, let's laud it and let's move on.
And the evidence of last year, definitely it's done that for the game anyway, so we won't complain about the ball anyways. Just to finish up, I didn't know if you knew this, but it was just brought to my attention, and we know GAA rules can be a little bit unusual at times, that we know that extra time is a new game. So even if you're down to 12 men in normal time, you can go back to 15 on 15 in extra time. So I think this is completely unique to the GAA. But did you know that ticks actually do carry over into extra time? So now, I bet you didn't know that.
I didn't know that. Well,
yellow card is wiped off your slate, but a tick carries on in. So just listen, this is for the future Cheddar, just to let you know. This happened in the Kildare-Longford game. It was Ben McCormack. Not to bring football into the hurling show, or people listening might melt listening to this.
Well, we wouldn't be giving away ticks anyway, Wooly. So
is there no ticks in the hurling?
No, I'd say there'd be much more severe tick than that if they were going to give it. No, I didn't know that actually. That's I suppose maybe it's an anomaly. Maybe there's some reason to it. I can't see it for the minute. Yeah. I did know that the extra time was new game and new rules or new team as such at that stage. All right, but I did know the ticks, and it's an interesting one. If it should be corrected if it's an anomaly and there's no real reasoning for it. I think just correct it and make it right.
Exactly. Right, we'll come back with some analysis. So we'll focus here on Clare and Tipperary, Cheddar, in part 2, because for me it's the big one of the weekend. Tipperary are in a weird position here, I think, Cheddar, because they've had such a brilliant start. They're playing so well. Now they have to go to Cusack Park, which is a really difficult place to go. You wouldn't be a crazy thing to see them beaten against Clare, and then all of a sudden they have to beat Limerick at home to make a Munster final. Isn't it crazy how quickly it can change down there?
Yeah, no, it is all right. Yeah, look, it's hugely competitive there, and the home and away game is dependent the way they fall for you on any given year. Obviously makes that even a little bit more difficult. Look, it's a real test of Tip's progress, I suppose. Yeah. And Liam will definitely be looking at it like that. I'll say, you're going to go into a cauldron here. It's not that long ago that a championship match at under 6 level between Tip and Clare was a bit of a cauldron. You can remember an under 21 final, a couple of under 21 Munster match a couple of years ago, and there was a lot left out in the field. So I think it'll be a real test of Tip's progress, and particularly I suppose their forward formation and the way they play, and it'll be also a bit of a test of maybe Tip's backline, because Clare will move you around the place, and you're going to have to do something with your backline. You cannot just go about 6 and 6 and hope that you're going to play zonally and mop up enough ball and deny Clare a win. So I think from Tipperary's point of view, obviously you need to go to win a match, but they'll actually welcome this game, and it'll be a serious test of their progress so far.
I think that's the thing, because we obviously know Clare's formation. This Podge Collins will be heading out around the field, and he'll create an extra man in defence, and then he'll try and get up and support the attack. So there'll be a 2-man full forward line with Conlon and O'Donnell. You've got Tony Kelly, who's going to drop into midfield as well, and he'll be doing the same as Podge. He'll be in and around, maybe won't do as much defensive work. He'll be there free when the ball is turned over, and he'll carry it. So do you man mark him? It's hard to know whether you even go back that far with him. And then you have Ryan and Duggan. Duggan's an option for puck outs. Like, Clare have a lovely balance to their team, I think. And when you look at their different options, Clare in attack, right? So they can go short to Tony Kelly, who comes deep. They could go short to Podge, who goes deep. Then they can run it through the lines with Colm Galvin, and they can give it in to O'Donnell in the corner. They can go to Duggan long with it if they want. They can run it through the lines, like I was saying. David Fitzgerald is a great runner with it, Colm Galvin. Then they can go long into the space if they want to Connellan, and they usually leave a load of space on one side of O'Donnell and Connellan, and they'll take turns running out into it. So for me, Tipperary have a lot of things, more than a lot of teams, to have to worry about and factor in tactically in this one.
No, I absolutely agree with you, Wooly, and I suppose that's why I say that it's a real test of Tip. And they probably don't have the type of player that you can tactically move around the field to do a job for you. Their game is very much on technical brilliance, creation of space in a different way, and hurting you from all over the field really. But if you're closed down, and you need to do something to neuter the opposition, who are you going to use to do that? Because if you look at even the way Clare set up against Waterford, we commented on it the last day. Now this was forced on them maybe a little bit by Waterford, but there was nearly 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8 lines on the field. If your Tony Kelly was out in front of the half-hour line, Podge was between the half, and he could have been anywhere. Jack Brown was in front of the full back line and that. So who are you going to use in the tip forward line to move around? Amar, Bubbles, Jason Ford, Seamus Callan, John McGrath, they're all out and out forwards. They're not the type of player that will sacrifice completely their game.
There's a very traditional structure on Tipperary still, isn't there? Now, and they're brilliant at that.
That's correct, yeah. So I suppose that's what I'm sort of referring to really, Willie. Will Liam and Eamon and Tommy and that will they change their team to maybe to neuter what Clare are doing, or will they just completely trust themselves and say, well, the hell with you, Clare, you can do what you want to do, we're going to go with our game plan and we'll go for it and we'll see where it goes. So I think it's going to be a really interesting game like that. The other side of it, I said it before a couple of times that I'd probably like to see a little bit more maybe strength in the Tipperary backline, or particularly the full backline, but probably the whole 6 really. I know they played well the last day, but in the whole 6 really, before you'd probably put him in the driving seat for one of the favourites to win in All-Ireland, and that's going to be tested because Clare have really quick, incisive forwards. They've got really big air game players. They've, as you explained a minute ago, Willie, they can play a number of different game plans. They can play an air game, they can play a ground game, they can play a lot of things, and it's definitely going to test out the Tipperary backline. And it's in Ennis, and Dalo and all, and they just love that whole cauldron, that whole atmosphere. That's going to be ratcheted up another 100% now because simply it's Tipperary is coming down there. I think the score. Now, I stand corrected on this, and some Tipperary listeners or Clare listeners might correct me on this, but I think the score is maybe 8-2 in the last 10 years to Tip. Obviously, the game in Semple was a big turnaround last year where Clare turned them over. So Clare have a bit of a whereas going down to Ennis is it's a huge challenge, but also Clare have a little bit of a challenge themselves to start turning this 8-2 score around over the last 10 or 11 years. So it is going to be a massive game, and it's going to be really interesting tactically to see what both managements do in terms of, do they just go with their own game plan and go 100% to that, or do they look at the opposition and see, well, what can we negate here in the opposition to give us a chance to win the game here.
Yeah, talking about Clare's home record, like we mentioned this on the show before, so in the last 6 seasons Clare have played 20 league and championship matches in Ennis. Now they only played 2 championship matches, that's all, so it'll be 18 league games, 2 championship matches. In those 20 games they only lost twice. That's a fair record now. That's 2 losses in 20, so there's no doubt it's a huge one. And the big tactical issue for Clare is going to be Bubbles, because Bubbles, we know, has been lining out centre half forward. Now we know Jack Brown played centre half back the last day, however it was juggled around, but he just left Carney go into midfield and went back covering. Clearly can't do that with Bubbles, right? So often a lot of teams, as we know, they might drop Colm Galvin back, or they'll drop a midfielder back to mark Bubbles, and whoever centre back can sweep. But then you're leaving Breen and Owen McGrath free, and that can't be done either. Breen scored 6 the last day. I mean, he cleaned up in midfield. Noel McGrath scored 2, but McGrath scored 4 against Cork. Like, your usual midfielder's close enough, you pick him up. That can't really be done with Tips. So you're a little bit snookered there. You'll have to bring a forward. It'll be Podge having to get back maybe.
Yeah, and
but he's a long way to go back to pick up Bubbles, so he probably wouldn't be doing that job, would he?
Well, I think Clare worked this very, very well. I saw them play Tip down in Thurles. Must have been the league quarter final maybe last year, or it was definitely one of those games anyway. And they actually sent the centre back. I think I might have actually been Dermot Fitzgerald at the time. I could be wrong on that, but they sent him out after Noel McGrath. Noel McGrath's playing virtually the same method as Bubbles is playing now. He'd be playing 30 yards out in front of you, 30 metres out in front of you, and picking up. They'd pick the pass out of the back line, and of course he's well within his scoring range at that stage, and eventually he's going to hurt you with 2 or 3 points, and then you're going to have to react to that. So Clare worked that well, and to put a man then in centre back to mop up the breaking ball, and they were able to carry it out of the defence. And of course they had runners all over the place, like Tony Kelly and that, to be able to pick the pass themselves coming out of the defence. So they have form here and how to actually manage Tip, and I suppose that's what I'm just saying. I'm not going to the game on Sunday, but I'd actually love to see how both teams set up and how both of them. There's always big plays and game breaking players on each team, and you just simply cannot leave them run riot, as you've explained. Some of the players you've explained there, anything more than 2 or 3 points from a player scoring in the middle third, you're probably going to react to that and do something about it. If you can kill that at source, well then you're now forcing the opposition management to change their tactics, and just think of that for a minute. You went through all your tactic boards before the game in the hotel or whatever the case may be, and that's what you have in your mind when you go out in the field, and suddenly you're being turned upside down with what the opposition management do to you, and now you're going to have to change, and your players are less familiar with it, and so on in your home ground. So I'd be really, really interested in looking at the game breaker players, what each management do to each other.
Yeah, no, definitely. Is the running game a little bit risky against Tip? Because one big change in Tipperary's game this year is that they're hunting. They have ratcheted up that, and if that running game breaks down, bang, it's into Callan or someone like that, and it's a goal. Do you know what I mean? It showed with Cork. Cork couldn't get their short game going really against Tip because of what Tip brought to the game, and they turned over a lot of ball and then gave it down. And let's be honest, if you're in big trouble with Tip if you're breaking down ball and you're out of position.
I think the last point's very important. I'd probably say that Cork, we know now that Cork were a small little bit off colour all over the field, and at the level that these boys are at, they'll hammer you as very, very quickly. I think just technically, what do you do? Well, the precision of the pass and where you put it, and the movement of the players in the forward line. You are going to pass the ball to hand or the space. You are going to retain possession. So the turnover, shouldn't happen as easily as that. But teams will protect themselves as well. So the interchange will say maybe between 5 and 10, or the interchange between 7 and 12. Your 7 may give and go and take the pass again and move up the field, whereas you will see a 10. And this is what Limerick do to an extent. You will see 10 coming back then and filling the space. So they do protect themselves against the turnover. Now you need a very athletic team and a savagely rehearsed team to do all of that, but teams would, and Clare in particular, have been doing that and been doing it under Davy for a number of years, and they're well schooled in how to handle these things, and being able to protect themselves against turnovers and that. Yeah.
So how do Tip handle Podge Collins and Tony Kelly then, based on the players they're going to have? Like, it's not in Tip's DNA to. Well, it is actually. They might try and free up Paddy Maher, will they? And that's the obvious thing to do. So one of Podge or Tony will be let go, and Paddy Maher will be freed up. Would that be fair?
It's difficult. That's the point I was sort of making earlier on. When you look at the players around the field, are you going to send Noel McGrath after Tony Kelly or something like that? No, you're not, because he just isn't that type of player. You're hoping that Noel McGrath will become your Tony Kelly. Yeah. And then when you move a little bit back, Brendan Maher has played midfield. Will you delegate Brendan Maher to pick up the likes of him, so he actually man marks from around the field? And you might actually sacrifice maybe a forward to do that for a period of the game, while you turn them over. So Tip have some players to do that, particularly Brendan Maher. Certainly can do that role for you. And bear in mind, Tony Kelly is out in the middle of the field a good little bit, but he's also then punches holes in your defence. You need an athletic, good tackler, good defender, very patient, very resilient player. And I'm just looking at Brendan Maher. He fits all of those things very
but
easily.
With a savage engine too, because Tony Kelly doesn't stop, does he? Like, he wears opponents down.
He does. Wooly, but there has been a lot of games when Tony himself has become very frustrated by doing an awful lot of movement but not getting enough possession, and he sort of has a huge amount of mobility around the field but not enough productivity out of the work that he does, and then he gets frustrated, and the next time you see him is on his own 14 metre line or 21 metre line. He's going back too far the field. Well, look, you're happy enough to leave him there. He's not going to hurt you back there. You'll pick him up again coming up along the field. A resilient intelligent player on Tony, if you can sacrifice him, and if you have that type of player, and I've just mentioned one, could certainly turn the tables on the likes of Tony, and get him very frustrated by just simply not getting on enough ball, and not enough productivity coming out of what he's doing.
Yeah, no, exactly. So how do you see this one going then? I suppose Clare have Shanaher on the bench, who gives them another option if they did want to go maybe route one on the Tip full back line. Like I say, kind of the way you're saying, like the Tipperary half back line won't like to be dragged around the way. Now, we said that against Cork as well, and they managed that fairly well. We don't know if Cork were off colour that day, but Clare definitely are going to give them something to think about, and they're going to drag them out of that traditional shape that they so like. How do you see it going?
Look, I just think for those reasons, I think they have a big physical presence in the forward line. I think if you do go along against Tip, they traditionally like to play that, or backs like to play that, and are very, very good at it. And if you look at what Cork done, coming down the straight in that game, that's what they sort of did. They went route one, looking for goals, obviously, and Tip mopped it up. But I think even if Clare went route one against them, there'd be a fair challenge there, in terms of that air game.
Yeah,
and I just think that the game is in Ennis. The statistics that you quoted, you cannot ignore them. Even though on the other side of that, the number of times Tip have turned them over is a lot as well. And I just think that I thought Clare, I suppose, we're sort of lucky to get out of Waterford the last day, Wooly, to be honest with you.
But they were the better team for most of it.
They were the better team. Certainly deserved to win the match. But it was a little bit worrying that they had control of the game and didn't just choke the match and get out of there. And, we're sort of left hanging on a little bit really at the finish of it. So that's a small little bit worrying. But I just think that the energy levels and the emotion and the hype and all of that around Ennis in this game will be as high as you'll find in any sporting event anywhere in the world, and I think they will rise to that. And I do think that Clare will get out. I don't think there'll be much in it, and that's surprising because Tipperary have been very, very impressive.
Very, very impressive. But that's what we're saying about the Munster Championship. It can change so bloody fast. 224 from play against Cork and 224 from play against Tip, and we're both going to tip against them.
Yeah, it's incredible that we are actually, Wooly. Yeah, I agree with you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'd say I do have some concerns. Not I don't want to be just beating a drum here because I've said it a number of times, and a few other people have said it as well. A little bit of concern about the Tip backline, particularly when it gets into Croke Park, and it's moved around the field. That I have a little bit concerned that it'll creak, and that. But look, they are serious All-Ireland contenders. Both of them are, and after the weekend, you might very well say, regardless of who wins it, these two teams are now the favourites for the All-Ireland. They may very well be.
Yeah, they might be. Just quickly, actually, just that I've thought of it, I was thinking they might free up Paddy Maher as the spare man and let Podge go. But would he not be perfectly suited for Duggan? We didn't talk about Duggan's aerial threat from puckouts, or would Ronan Maher potentially be the one to pick him up?
Look, it is interesting. Look, Ronan Maher is well equipped to manage him, and Duggan is a fair handful for anybody. It wouldn't make any difference who it was. He's a fair handful. But Paddy Maher is definitely the man you would try and free up, and Liam has done that anytime he could do it, because the precision of the pass and the pass to space and all of that. He's a long range passer, and particularly with the quality of forwards you have inside, you would be trying to free up Paddy Maher if you could, over Ronan or even over Brendan. And Tip have, generally speaking, try to do that, but I'd be gobsmacked if Clare allow that to happen.
So Podge will go deep, but not too deep that leaves Paddy completely free. He'll kind of half bluff them. He'll be back in the forwards, he'll be marked, and now he's going back and now he's going forward. So a full-time sweeper makes it easy for Tip to free up Paddy Maher, whereas Podge won't make it easy for that to happen.
Yeah, they're moving around the place. He'll just engage him the whole time, and even if he's not engaging him, you might very well see Duggan just stepping in on Paddy Maher and saying, well, look, I'm going to engage you before I'm going to engage Ronan here. There'll be a lot of little subplots like that throughout the game that I would suspect that both managements have gone through. If these things happen, the what ifs, I suppose you're dealing with here. Here's how we'll handle it.
Yeah, exactly. So Paddy Power have Clare at 6-5, slight outsiders at home in Fortress Cusack Park. Tipperary slight favourites at 10-11. We're both going for Clare then, Cheddar. That's it.
I think there's obviously going to be it's the cliche game. There's nothing in this, but just based on the game in Clare and the importance of it, and the emotional context of this game for Clare people. Doesn't need me to explain this, but the whole Clare hurling public, is all along the Channel border with Tip and North Tip there, so there is a serious local rivalry going on here, and dragging Tipperary across the Ennis, Clare people won't let them out of there easy, I can tell you.
They won't. Okay, we'll come back with Paddy Power predictions. Okay, Cheddar, Paddy Power predictions. We'll start with Waterford Limerick. So this is in Walsh Park. Waterford are 23-10, Limerick are 4-9. So you get Waterford over 2-1 at home in Walsh Park, which we were all talking about it being a fortress. But the interesting thing about this is Limerick and analysing what they're going to do after a loss. Now, there's two ways of looking at this, and it's anticipated that John Kiley is going to make some personnel switches to his team. And this is what I want to talk to you about. So this is a quote from John Kiley. The guys that didn't play the last day have put their best foot forward in terms of looking for inclusion this weekend, and you would expect that anyways. So he's hinting a little bit there, and it was John Fogarty in the Examiner that's saying it's anticipated that he's going to make several positional changes. Now, is that knee-jerk? Now, I would expect Pádraig Fanning to make a lot of changes because he's 2 games to work on that didn't work out. Limerick had an off day. Like the analysis of last year and so far in the league has been that this team is outstanding. They've every box ticked. Surely that team deserve one more game before there's a load of personnel switches, or can one game just completely rip the script and maybe pick new players?
I don't think you rip the script, Wooly, but this is ruthless, and it has to be ruthless, and it's too late on Sunday evening if you find out that you're not ruthless. And you're going on your gut instinct here, but you're also going what you're seeing in the training field. And sometimes players, even great players, can go a little bit stale really quickly, and they can come back into form again 3 or 4 weeks down the line. And I suppose the great managers in any sport spot that, and they're able to spot and fix, I suppose is the saying. They're able to fix these things and push the team on again. I know where John's going here, because you cannot just say everything's all right. Everything's not all right when you've performed. I didn't say they don't think they performed poorly, but they certainly weren't at the standard that they were.
But if it was a psychological thing where maybe they believe their own hype, that's fixable, right? In the couple of weeks, and the kick in the arse and the embarrassment of the performance, do they deserve one more go and then change them all, or should you just be ruthless like you said?
No, you got to be ruthless.
Right.
You don't have time. You don't have a second chance. There's no second chances here. We can't say on one hand that the Munster Championship is dog eat dog, and on the other hand saying that's all right with a second chance. You don't. But I think what John is saying, you need to follow. If you say something judicious like that to your team, well, you need to bloody well follow through on it. And if you say, and I think he was measured in what he said. He said that people that are working on the panel are really putting themselves in the shop window here to grab a jersey, but something, the other lads are after raising their game here as well. So you need to be careful what you say to the team and what you're going to say to so on, and you need to back up what you say, because these are serious statements. One thing, Willie, that I'm very interested in is, I just thought that last year, and I've commented on this maybe last week as well, I thought Seamus Flanagan is not the glory by hurler of Limerick hurling. What am I trying to say here? He's not the most technically skillful and so on of Limerick hurling, and he probably never will be. And in my view, last year he was the most important player that they had. He's the real glue about how their system works. And I was surprised. Now, he may be injured. I don't know, and you don't know enough of what's going on in the camp. So I'll qualify what I'm saying here is there could be anything. He could have just lost form. He could be injured. There could be a whole pile of things going on here by which he's not getting a start. But certainly, the majority of things last year, whether it was the off-the-ball stuff that was going on, and by that I mean the decoy running and that, or the link play that was going on, or his position on the field, was the most important thing. Now, people spoke about the 2 wing-backs moving back and the movement of Gillan and the placing of Gillan and the freeing up of it and so on. The person who facilitated almost all of that was Seamus Flanagan. And I was just surprised that he had lost his place. And I just thought that, did Paul and the lads, did they think, well, look, we need to come with something different, and they do that too. I absolutely agree with that. So I think that's going to be an important one.
He set the tone for the whole team, Flanagan did.
He did.
And even his tackling and his work rate, never mind his movement, he did. I thought he set the tone completely for them in the forwards anyway. And
he wasn't a marquee player, is the word I couldn't think of a minute ago. I think just back to, look, this is not dissimilar to Cork. You didn't become bad overnight, but you do need to raise all. It might be just 2% in everything, in terms of the overall performance of the team. In other words, there wasn't a complete functions failure of the team or anything like that.
No,
that you needed to go away. And you don't need open heart surgery in the team.
That's the thing. See, remember Cork, like Tim O'Mahony clearly didn't have a good game, and the few changes were obvious for Cork, whereas Limerick just had a general a poor performance from all of them below standard, really.
And I'd probably would disagree with you a little bit in that. I think if Tim O'Mahony was there the last day, they would have still won the match. I don't think Mark Ellis, he played well, but would he have played any better? I think just Cork simply all over the field raised their game individually and collectively as a team and just overran Limerick. Now Limerick have the ability to do the same thing, so I'd be surprised if John Kiley, made any serious knee-jerk reactions and made big serious statements about dropping 5 or 6 players. I'd be surprised if that was the case. I would think that collectively within the team they'll be working on the mindset. Let's get the mindset right here. We've got to work much harder all over the field at doing the key things within our game plan, and if we do, we'll be all right. Now, if that's not happening, of course, you've got to make some changes then, and you've got to be ruthless in these things.
Yeah, exactly. So Waterford, the talk is Waterford are going to bring Brick Walsh back in for his 75th championship match, possibly at full forward. So he played full forward there years and years ago. I think when he started off, he might have played full forward back when Cork were the big rivals with those brilliant matches. But I don't know, Fanning's in the stage where he has to change something now. There's no doubt about that. I don't think Kevin Moran at wing back works. He tried Brick Walsh out in the backs. If you're at 34, 35, Cheddar, you can't be chasing a lad around. It's the other end of the field you finish out your career. You definitely don't finish your career coming back into the defence. That's, I think, is a big mistake. Kevin Moran's going to have to go out of wing back. Maybe Kieran Bennett can come back in there, and Brick Walsh, if he's playing, has to be in the forwards too. Because for me, Moran, a big one and I've mentioned this on the show, maybe not to you. Moran is their leader. Moran is the man that stands up and is counted, and now he doesn't do that anymore because he's chasing a lad around and he's worried about that, and he's just become just another player. Maurice Shanahan could potentially come in, but the point I'm trying to make is if Brick came in, Maurice Shanahan came in, now they've a big air threat. He's going to have to change what he's done the first 2 games because that hasn't worked. Would that be fair? It's time for him to start thinking different. I think Park will change some things around. And look, he's a strong panel here. You're not just trying things here. A lot of these players are proven and tested in big games. Incidentally, he'll be missing Philip Mahoney anyway, so he's going to have to make a change back there anyway. Well, Kieran Bennett could come in there for him.
True. I do think. You say Kevin Moran, your key players, you need to put them in the positions that are going to influence the game most, and that could very well be from half back. If you were playing carry ball out of the defence, and ultimately the half back is the player that's in, it could be long range shooting or something like that. The half back then could be in the influencing area, but at the minute it didn't look like that, and I do agree with you. I think he would have more influence maybe in the middle of the field at the minute. But look, Waterford are at home. They had a fair go off of Clare the first day, and made that a very, very competitive game. It didn't look like it for a long time, and they were sort of caught out a little bit by the way Clare set up. They're definitely going to know Limerick well, I would think. Whether they'll be able to handle the way Limerick play or not now will be seen. But they've a very, very strong team, and probably if they just get one win at the weekend, they could very well set them up. 4 points could put you in a great shape here for Munster. At least could make it, there could be a lot of teams on those points the way teams are shedding points here. So nothing, the year is not lost in Waterford. This game is just still so important to them. No,
they're not completely out of it, and I suppose Walsh Park, in that a tight pitch, Limerick won't get the space, and that middle third will be a battleground, and we know that Limerick didn't really like that against Cork or Dublin, so you'd imagine Waterford need to bring it down into the trenches in that area and get the home crowd behind them and I wouldn't completely rule Waterford out of the game, but they definitely need to show. They definitely need to move things around. If you see Waterford lining up similar to the last 2 games, I'd be disappointed with that.
I think they do need to come. Maybe, Wooly, I do agree with you with maybe a different game plan. But I'd probably say that certainly the day against Clare, both teams were probably reacting to one another in terms of the way they set up. It was unusual to see so many lines of players on the field. Let's put it that way. Look, Waterford have seen some players, they've Shane Fives, Curran, Prendergast, you mentioned Maurice Shanahan there as well, and Bennett, like that. These are serious championship players with good pedigree. So replacing them, they could be a game breaking player, and certainly Maurice Shanahan has been a game breaker player in the past. So I think what would be important for Waterford if they could get out. I know we all look for a good start, but get a good start with a number of points on the board and get a toehold in the game, because I think they have some big competitive players to be able to handle the height and the physicality of Limerick, particularly their forwards and that. So I think if they did, then it could be very, very interesting. I think if Limerick, gain control of the game fairly early, I think it'll be difficult. I think Limerick will up their game. They have to, because they've got to get back to the performance levels that they had last year. And will they do a Cork on it then? Will it be very, very high intensity with things working for them? And if they get ahead of Waterford, will they push on from there? So I think it's really important that Waterford really go for this game from the very, very start and make themselves, force themselves on the game. Get ahead, get the Waterford crowd behind them, and then really have a go at it from there.
Yeah. Okay. So who are you going for in this one? Then 23-10, Limerick 4-9.
Look, you'd have to say Limerick on performance, and particularly the league final in that as well. I'll put it this way to you: if Limerick had played well the last day, I'd be more concerned about it. I think they've got the kick in the pants. I think the performance in the league final, and if they had won the last day, might have lulled them into a little bit of a sense of false security. I don't think you'll see that. I think they'll really be up for this. And I think their performance in the league final against Waterford and that, you'd expect them to come out on top here. But I said it a number of times this year. I think it may take Waterford, a year just to find new ways of playing and that. And, you will not just turn these things around in a year. So it'll take a little bit of time, and it might take another little bit of time before they'll get the best out of the current team in the way that they're actually currently playing.
Okay, I'll go against the grain there and go for Waterford in the tight ground, and maybe Limerick to lose 2 in a row, because we expected Tipperary to turn it around last year and they never did. But you never know. Okay, Carlow is the next one, 7-1. Dublin are 1-10. This is in Dr. Colm Park. A lovely quote from Colin Bonner here, Cheddar. So this is what he said. He said, "We can't be ruled out of it yet, because we have a home game and then an away game to Wexford. So Dublin will be under savage pressure to get the 2 points on board to get their championship back on mode." 2 things there, which was brilliant. Number one, not ruling himself out of getting into the Leinster final or moving on, which is fantastic. That's a brilliant attitude to have, and then to throw a little bit of pressure onto Dublin, who badly need points on the board. So well played, Colin Bonner, on board. In just that one sentence, he played a blinder.
Yeah, Colin was quite clever in that. It's a real banana skin for Dublin, Wooly. When you look back at the games between Dublin clubs and Carlow clubs, and when you look back, there was a number of years ago there, I think Carlow beat in under 21 in Dr. Colm Park. They're a completely different animal in Dr. Colm Park. There'll be a big crowd there. And
the fear factor they had against Kilkenny won't be there against Dublin.
No, it won't. And they've definitely targeted this game, Wooly, from way back. They've certainly targeted. They knew going to Galway was going to be a tough one. You'd say the performance was good there. They were caught by the pace of the hurling. I think one of the lads actually said at the last day at the start of the game against Kilkenny, but they acquitted themselves quite well in the second half, and I can tell you no Kilkenny team will take the foot off the gas. They won't be allowed to do that.
1-11-13, they won the second half.
Yeah, and look, that's incredible.
It's good going,
it's an incredible statistic, and great credit due to him, and great credit to Colm to keep the confidence in the players at half time and to put out that performance in the second half. And look, if Waterford sets themselves up in a certain way that frustrates the way Dublin play, and the game is tight, and Dublin have to win this, Wooly. They've drew the last day, lose this, and are they gone out of Leinster? They probably are. So it's a real banana skin, I think, for Dublin. And teams can get a little bit nervous and things like that. I hate the saying that Carlow have nothing to lose, because they're the very same amount to lose as Dublin have to lose. I hate that saying, but I'd say I might say what you said, that Carlow can play with no fear here and really go for it, and they have enough quality. You'd have to give it to Dublin based on the league performances and a number of other things, but I think this is going to be very, very close, and it wouldn't surprise me if Carlow just snuck out of there with a pint, to be honest with you.
Wow. And the one concerning thing, I remember last year Offaly played really well against Kilkenny in the opening game, and then I think they performed well against Galway maybe, and then in the third game they came a cropper against Dublin and then got hammered against Wexford. And I was just wondering, would that be a similar situation with Carlow, pretty much using the same first 15? Now I know they got a 2-week break, which will be a big thing, which Offaly didn't get last year, which was unfortunate, so I don't know if that would play anything into it.
I think there's a difference though. Well, certainly the current Carlow team are better than the Offaly team, first of all, and look, at the end of the day, the quality of your team matters here. But I think the second thing that really matters here, I think from way out, Carlow will probably be targeting this game, and it probably has fell for them a little bit as well. You know, Dublin be beaten in the first game, although it played brilliantly for 45 minutes, and then drawing the last day has probably, you know, sharpened the focus for Carlow in this game, and I think they're going into this game, you know, they're going in to try and win it, not just to quit themselves.
I'd say they are. I'd say you're right. They looked at those fixtures and went Kilkenny, Galway, right? Well, Dublin, Wexford are arguably, now whether they wouldn't have talked about this in a meeting, but potentially their management might have talked about this, that potentially the second two games are two games we could potentially win. So that Dublin one is massive at home to get that rolling.
Yes, it is. Look, all known form and so on would suggest that Dublin would win it, and they sort of have to win it. But I think that'll go out the window, particularly again home venue, Carlow crowd behind them, and particularly if they stay in, if they're, you know, if they do like they did against Kilkenny and concede a lot of scores earlier on, well then it'll be difficult for them to do. But if they're in the game and they're scoring point for point, it will be very interesting in the second half. Okay,
so you're going for a Dublin win, but definitely you don't think by too much.
No, I wouldn't. Certainly, I wouldn't be going with the odds that's been quoted anyway.
Okay, right. Last one then. Cheddar is the Joe McDonagh Cup, round 3. Incredibly, Offaly are back in the mix in this. So I kind of mentioned this to Brian on Monday, but he's obviously involved in the team and didn't want to get too much into it. I think he kind of answered another question when I said that to him. But that Kerry result throws this wide open. Now 4 points can potentially get Offaly into a final. That's based on Laois winning all their games, you know, and then everybody else being left on foot, or Kerry, Offaly and Westmeath potentially being left on 4 points.
No, that's true. That situation could arise, but you know, I don't think Offaly will be looking at it like that. They'll just take it at a game at a time. The importance of this game for Offaly is massive. You know, even winning the game may not be enough for you. You know, so you've got to take it one game at a time. It was interesting to hear Joachim make the comments about spirit and that, and probably in the time available to them, there's only a small amount of things you can do. Certainly that's one of the things. Re-energise the team, get spirit back into the team. I think they've got some players back. You might need to restructure the team a little bit, but you certainly are not going to change the way they're going to play and all of that, and you know, a spirit and that type of stuff wouldn't be enough long term for the Offaly team. They need to be looking at an awful lot of other things, but in the time available you've got to focus on, you know, you've got to focus on the things that's going to give you the biggest the Pareto effect, I suppose we'd call it in project management, the things that's going to give you the biggest kick on the day, and they are definitely that. But bear in mind, like, that Antrim have 2 points on the board as well at home, and I was at their game with Laois, and you know, Laois looked you know, much more comfortable in the scoreline, but yet left Antrim hang in it, and you know, Antrim had chances of a couple of goals that day that could have made it, you know, much tighter and much closer, and you know, they seem to have stabilised and got a settled team together in that. So look, that it's not a foregone conclusion for Offaly at all, and even if they win it, it could be still tough on them to actually survive. On the flip side of that, they could very well get into a Joe McDonagh final as well.
That's the thing. And look, even I'm just after saying Laois could win all their games, sure. Like, I mean, like we said with Tipperary, Laois are after getting a great start, but it wouldn't be crazy for Laois to go away to Kerry and lose and then have to beat Westmeath even to get into the final. Like, it's a fantastic competition, I know, and this is not said in a patronising way. It's any team can beat anything. Antrim have beaten Kerry, who've beaten Westmeath, you know, who Laois have beaten. It's or who Kerry have beaten, and they're all capable of beating each other, and like they are tough calls, all of these predictions.
No, I absolutely agree with that, Willie. I think it's a good competition in the sense that, you know, you're playing teams broadly similar in ability to yourself. The real concern I have with all of that, you know, I just don't want to keep saying that, but if a competition like that, and the same thing's going to happen in the football here, if you're going to put in a secondary competition, the objective of that secondary competition is to improve counties to a certain ability to be able to play at the top level, or is it just simply to have a secondary competition? Because they're two very, very different strategies. And
well, for me, it looks like it's just to give them a competition at their level.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Because if there wasn't, you would see a comprehensive development plan in those counties. And you're going back to the point, to be forced to put some stuff on TG4 and replay it on TV and all of that probably illustrates it quite clearly where people's heart is in this. But anyway, look, let's not drift a little bit away. The importance of the game for Offaly is massive, and it probably is for Antrim. Antrim have 2 points, of course, already. A win from Antrim puts them in great
right
position
back
as
in the
well.
mix. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Right back in the mix. Who do you fancy then? Offaly are 4-9, fairly strong favourites. I wouldn't have them at 4-9 based on the pressure they're under, and Antrim are 21-10, so 2-1 on Antrim away. Whether they don't travel well, probably that's down to that. Who do you fancy here?
I think Antrim have a decent enough actual. And bear in mind they've been in Laois recently as well, so it's, they're well used to that journey as such. I just think that I fancied Offaly against Westmeath, and they seriously didn't show spirit that day, and like when you don't have that, you're really having a chance. But when you flip that over, are they going to give something now for a new management? You would expect that they would. So the competition on every single ball, the competitiveness on every single ball needs to be blood and bone stuff. And if they have that, they probably have some forwards that can do damage inside. But it'll all really hinge on how they'll react to what has happened, and whether they take a responsibility really for where they are and really push on from there. You can't do a huge amount in terms of game planning and tactical planning and restructuring your team and that. You'll only be able to do a small bit in that. So it's all down to really the mindset of the Offaly players. Are they willing to really put the body on the line on every single ball right throughout the game for 75 minutes or 2 hours or however long it will take? If that's the mindset, I sort of fancy Offaly to win it.
Okay, all right, I'll go with Offaly as well. Right, that's brilliant stuff, Cheddar. We'll leave it there. We'll be back with Patrick from Paddy Power. Patrick from Paddy Power, how's it going?
Not too bad, Colm. How are you?
Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much.
Come here, we're going to start with my accumulator. So do you want to tell the people about my accumulator? I hope they're still believing in me despite my poor enough start.
Yeah, this is the week now. We're 100% sure the tide has to turn, and we're hoping to give the punters back some of their hard earned for the last couple of weeks.
I've gone for short enough odds this week, so...
Yeah, so you've gone for Limerick, Clare and Dublin -8 to win. So that was 5-1 on the site, probably just a little bit below 5-1. So we're going to enhance that to 11-2 this week. Okay,
very good. You're not enhancing it by an awful lot now. That's not very...
but this is the one that's going to win, you see. We can see into the future. We know this one's getting up.
I wouldn't mind. Cheddar's just totally turned me off. He's totally turned me off the Dublin -8 one. He thinks Carlow could potentially get a draw there. But anyways, that's it. That's it now. Any specials then for the weekend or anything you want to tell me about?
Yeah, so we've the 3 favourites as well on Sunday. Tip, Limerick and Dublin. They're going to be fairly popular. They already have been, to be honest. That was 2-1, just under 2-1. We're going to enhance that to 9-4 as well. Aaron Gillen and Shamie Cannon both to score a goal. Cannon's already got one. He's already got 2, I think, this season. And Gillen obviously scored in the league final against Watford. So we're going to enhance that to 11-2. And one we did a couple of weeks ago with Bubbles and Shamie Harnedy, we're going to do John O'Dwyer and Graham Mackay both to score 10 or more points between them in either game, and that's going to be 8-1.
Okay, very good. On the actual match odds, Tipperary slight favourites is an interesting one considering Clare's unbelievable home record.
Yeah, that was the thing. I mean, what you try and quantify as an odds compiler really is like everyone talks about what Fortress Ennis and how much is it worth. So I actually went through it a little bit this week to try and see what it was worth. And if you looked from the league and championship from the start of 17, you can see that the difference between Clare's score and average, they've scored 25 points in all their home games, and their average in their away games has been only 20 points. But if you actually look at their winning margin in that time, there's a huge difference. So they've won on average in league and championship for the last 2.5 years. They've won their average winning margin is 5 points. If you compare that to their away matches, it's actually minus nearly 4 points.
Right.
So like where people go on about how much of an advantage Ennis is, like it really, really is going to be a massive advantage to them. It has been a massive advantage to them. And if you look at Tip as well, like the interesting thing about Tip in the last 2 years is that when Tip beats you, you really know you're dead. If I can.
Well, 224 from playing both their first 2 games is sensational.
That's exactly it. And like if you look back, you have to go back to the Galway game in 2016 to see a game that they've won by either a point or 2 points. So they've drawn games and they've absolutely annihilated teams. So like they've beaten. In 8 games they've beaten teams by double figures in that time, and they've drawn 2 matches. So like if Tip are going to beat you, they're going to hammer you. But the thing is, if you look at Clare, and if Clare are still in that game with, we'll say 15 minutes 10 minutes left, with that crowd in Ennis, it's really going to get on top of Tip, and it's going to be very interesting because the last three All-Ireland champions have proved that you're going to have to win at least one game coming through the championship by a point or 2 points, and it's going to be interesting to see when really hot under the collar, how mentally strong Tip are.
Yeah. Anything else jumping out at you, or will we move on?
Yeah, there was Shane O'Donnell was very, very impressive considering he missed out on a lot of hurling. He was first goal of the 8-1. I thought he was very interesting, and one guy I think is going to have a huge game in the championship, and I hope it's this Sunday, is Diarmuid Ryan. He's a really, really, really strong young talent. He's 20-1 for man of the match with us, so he's going to click someday, and I think hopefully it'll be Sunday.
20-1 for man of the match.
20-1 for man of the match.
That's a great price then, because he looked in good form in the game against Waterford. Definitely, he looked fresh. Anything in Offaly, Antrim, Offaly? You've got them as strong favourites despite the massive pressure they're feeling.
Yeah, that's right. In Offaly, they've been pretty popular. Like everything that's coming out of the Offaly camp. Obviously, you have Brian Carroll off this show, and you'd wish him the best, but the lads and Joaquin Kelly, they really seem to have hit the ground running. Anything that we've heard coming out of Offaly is really, really strong. Half-time, full-time, they're 10-11, but you can get them to win by 4 to 6 points at around 9-2. They're expecting a really big performance, and I heard Joaquin Kelly on Midlands Radio there, and it was like a rallying war cry. It was nearly like Braveheart or something like that. He was trying to tell the people of Offaly to come out and support them and stuff like that. And they're still 10-1 to win the Joe McDonagh outright. They're going to have a couple of results go their way, but if we believe what we're hearing coming out of the camp, then I think, I think you're going to see a measured improvement from Offaly in this game.
Okay, what's that half-time, full-time price?
Half-time, full-time, it's 10-11.
Okay, so that's not a bad one. That's definitely not a bad one.
A decent shot.
All right, Patrick, we'll leave it there. We'll be back on Monday, and the aforementioned Brian Carroll, I'm sure, will be here with us then. So we'll talk to you then. Good luck.